Yeah, I can produce that.
Well, we've cut back the presentation. It's, as the zoning dwindled, the presentation materials got reduced. We used to have 104 units.
Yeah.
Take us
and I think
2/3 the time.
Most people here are familiar with, probably at earlier meetings.
Yeah.
So they're, generally familiar with, the earlier, the locus and so forth. And also the traffic study, then I guess that would be helpful to have.
Yep.
Electronic copy of that. I presume it's changed since.
It has. They require us to do a new study.
Okay. Is there any other conservation commission involved at all?
No historical.
This is it. Okay. So,
Should we start?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's just start.
Good evening. My name is Jim Rafferty. I'm a lawyer here in Cambridge. It's nice to be back. I represent the Fawcett, Red Fawcett, Rob Fawcett. Their family has owned and operated the Fawcett oil site at the location here at Tyler Court and bottom of Cottage Park since early 70s. Have you been in that particular location? But they go back generations in Cambridge. Probably most everyone has, this may be a bit of a reunion for some of us because we've been here, we were looking at the earliest dates on our plans. They're dated 2007, so we've been here a few times, and this project is now got formed, as you might anticipate, by and large by the changes to the zoning that were contained in the Bishop petition that was passed by the City Council. So just to spend 1 minute filling you in of where we were before and where we are now. When we first came here, the proposal had been under the zoning as it then existed was for 104 units contained in 2 buildings. This project has been reduced based upon the reduction in the zoning to 67 units. And they're contained in a single building. Mark Boyes-Watson and Kelly Speakman from the design firm Boyes-Watson Architect will take you through the site. This image is kind of telling if you can see this. This is the perspective if you were to stand at the end of Tyler Court. And as we know today, Tyler Court just feels like a driveway and then becomes a whole bunch of surface parking. And you'll see in the site plan and all that, we're going to begin to introduce driveways and green space and define pedestrian circulation and movement. But this would be looking at Tyler Court towards the building. The linear park is on your left. And if you can see, this building is 3 stories along the linear park because the zoning requires that it be a reduced height there. And then it's 4 stories for the balance of it. The total height of the building is 45 feet. 40, thank you. So I'm going to stop with facts and dimensions because Mr. Boyes-Watson will go through that, but suffice it to say that the project complies with all of the dimensional requirements now associated with the Bishop petition. Tell you a few things about parking. 67 units. We have 78 parking spaces with expectation that we'll be able to accommodate visitors and others in the parking field. You'll notice, and Mr. Boyes-Watson will explain, there are 3 parking areas. They've been sited away from the linear park. One's a controlled parking facility with gates on it, and then there are 2 surface parking, so if someone were to come and visit, they wouldn't have to access the controlled parking facility. The site has a high requirement of open space. It has a 40% requirement. We're actually able to achieve 50%, so there's an awful lot of green space on this site. And there's been a lot of attention paid to the positioning of that green space and how it can be utilized. There's passive space, there's play area, there's courtyards around the residence of the building. So it really attempts to take advantage of the site and really create something special there. If you've been by there, we all know what it's like now. It's one would be hard pressed to find any green space on the site today. We have left the egress patterns for the most part unchanged in that there is no access onto or from Brookford Street. We got a message kind of early on in our meetings that that was a condition that neighbors wanted to see unchanged. So you can approach the site from the two sides. The Whittemore Ave side, you can come in. Residents could come in, and also at Cottage Park. And as you know, the Cottage Park site is fed by Tyler, Court, Cottage Park, and Edmonds, all coming in on that side. So that's about all we have to say. There's a hearing on this. The first hearing on this is going to be held at the Planning Board on Tuesday, the 5th of March, the first Tuesday night in March. It's at 7:20 in the evening. The Planning Board meets at the City Hall Annex at the corner of Inman and Broadway. The project requires a special permit, two types of special permit. One called a project review special permit. It applies to any building that's over 50,000 square feet. It also needs what's called a multifamily special permit, because in certain zoning districts, if you have a multifamily project, you have to get a multifamily special permit. Those are heard as part of the same application, the same presentation. Of the 67 units, we are subject to the city's affordable housing guidelines, which means that there are 8 of those units are affordable. The project you'll hear from Mark and Kelly is a mix of 1s, 2s, and 3s. And studios, and therefore the proportionate share of the affordable units needs to reflect the overall proportionate share of the mix. It is anticipated to be a rental building, but for purposes of design, that's really immaterial. It could someday become condos. Nothing would preclude that. You'll notice in the floor plans in the area, heavy emphasis on providing indoor bicycle access. It's a big feature for the city. It's something we've been able to accommodate. So I think we've got
We've 67, 1 per unit inside the building, plus 12 outside visitor bicycle.
So the outside can accommodate business. So everyone who gets a unit gets a bicycle spot. That's the city's preferred approach. There's actually a zoning amendment out there now that right now the zoning requires you to have 1 bicycle space for every 2 units. But they're encouraging people to do 1-to-1. So this is ahead of the curve, or where the city says they want to see people go. So you'll recall, the biggest change, frankly, in the Bishop petition was a reduction in the number of units, what was called the lot area per dwelling unit. So this project is now at 67 units. Mark will point out to you that the area that the old Norberg greenhouses at Whittemore Ave, the decision has been made to remove that area from the project and set that up as 4 freestanding lots of 5,000 square feet. And those lots could accommodate either a 1 or a 2 family house, so a maximum number of 8 units at some point down the road. Current thinking is they probably would get sold. They could get sold collectively. They could get sold singly, but they would be 1 or 2 family houses. They would have a Residence B scale, and we think they'll provide a nice texture and residential edge to the building, to the site. And you may recall some of our earlier proposals, that was surface parking, and it's now going to be 4 lots are located. You'll see 4 lots are on Whittemore, and 1 is around the corner on Magoon. So they kind of frame that corner. Community gardens, I'm sure people are mindful of the fact that the city had expressed an interest in acquiring the gardens. They did some due diligence and did some environmental testing, which revealed the presence of some arsenic. And that has now been just going through the DEP process at the moment. We haven't heard much from the city lately. I think their expectation is that they would expect us to handle the mitigation there before they would have an interest in pursuing it. So that is in the process. There is an LSP, and the property owners are working through that. That site is, like the site across the street, is not part of this project. It's not in the area. So Mark could walk you through the site, the building, and obviously answer any questions you have.
So, I'm Mark Watson. I think Jim just went over this, just a reminder of the basic sort of statistics of the project. It's a 130,000 square foot lot, more or less.
A little louder, please, Mark.
About 83,000 square feet of gross floor area, which yields a floor area ratio of 0.63. There are 67 units, as Jim said. 67, actually it's that's out of date, 71, 70.
71 plus 7 is 78.
78 parking spaces. Oh wait, there you go. And let's look at the site plan. I can show you where everything lands. This is the existing, and Jim was describing how, so the blue is the site area, and in the SD2, and the yellow part is actually in the residential B zone. And the colored areas form the site that this building sits on. Jim was referring to this parcel and this parcel, which consists of actually 3 subdivided lots on Whittemore and 1 5,000 square foot lot on Magoon that are not part of this project. You will see them illustrated once as a sort of idea of what they might be, but they're not part of this project or this special permit. So let's go to the next slide. So we don't need to dwell on this. You're all familiar with the site. So these are just for the planning board, some existing conditions photographs. This is starts to put you in context of the overall area. And as we've talked about at many of our meetings up till now, obviously a lot of different site conditions and edges to this site, including the linear park, which is along the bottom of the page. Whittemore and Magoon coming down, Brookford dead-ending in the site, Cottage Park that actually extends now with the private driveway into our site, and Mass Ave out here, and Magoon Street at the end, which we actually tie back to. So let's go. These are just views down the streets. So this sort of gets you a little bit more zoomed in, and I'm going to just describe first how vehicles move through the site, and then I'll go into talk a little bit about how the building works. So
could you just outline the footprint of the building, just to
yes.
people?
So you can probably all see the street. So the building footprint is this, and the 2 tones that you see on here are the areas of the building that are 4 stories, are the darker blue, and the paler blue are the 3-story portions of the building. So it shows you how it steps down towards the linear park. So I'm just going to quickly go over the vehicles, and I'll go over the idea behind the open space system, and then we'll pile into the building a little bit. So the Whittemore Ave end with Magoon, a private driveway goes in, allows for a turnaround, and there's a front door to the building here. There is parallel parking down the driveway here, and a small parking lot here with 5 cars in it. And there's a controlled access. When Jim was referring to the controlled access part of the parking, there are control gates here and here. And that's coming from the earliest suggestions in the earliest meeting that this project not create a cut-through. So there are gates that control that, and then there's parking all through here. With the parking that's here is covered by the building. And then at the other end of the site, so Brookford Street dead ends and it's landscaped at the end. Cottage Park's, the driveway starts here, comes through, and you can get out to either Tyler or Edmund Street. And basically we're gathering up the different ways of getting into the site and uniting, and then there's another entrance to the building here. So the building basically has 2 entrances, here and here. The controlled access parking is here. The parking that is accessible to residents or visitors at the Cottage Park end is here, and at the Whittemore Ave end is along here and here. So, and what that's doing is between the building siding, the building is basically sited a long way from its lot lines, and it is then in its open space system working to, and this has come a long way, I hope you'll agree, since the beginning, where we've tried to get all of this green space contiguous to the linear park. sort of emphasizing that experience as you go down the linear park of really amplifying and sometimes more than doubling the width of the linear park here, and pretty much doubling it in the courtyard of the building, and it now, which is relatively a recent arrival, is getting it to be very green at the end of Cottage Park Ave, and that was that view that you saw up on the screen before Jim started speaking. And we have, basically, the landscape has different kind of functions depending on where it is. Up here, you're buffering to the big Grace parking lot. There's a swale, a draining swale down here that's accommodated along here. And then this large piece of open space is kind of frisbee area and stuff for the residents. So it's kind of active, general kind of lawn. There's a more intimate and project-related courtyard here that residents get access to, and there's a patio, and it's going to have some more intimate perennials and what have you. There's a more intimate landscape. And at the end of Cottage Park, a sort of passive area that actually, on this whole fence, it doesn't show on this drawing, but this whole fence is designed, and in general, the fence to the linear park is designed, the original chain link fence stays, and we are planting against that fence kind of natural vines, etc., etc. So we intend that for that though the fence will be there, the visual border will be merged, so that contiguity of open space is sort of achieved visually, even though you won't be able to walk through there.
Mark, could you just remind people the access point to the linear park that gets created at the end?
Yes, yes, I can. So right now there's access to the linear park just off here, and as you know, there's the one that comes through here and comes up here. In addition to that, at the end of Cottage Park Avenue, there is right now this little trail that leads down off the linear park, and right now dead ends into the back of the storage sheds, where the garage building, so-called, for Fawcett. So when that building, the building that's here, is removed, it allows for a connection here that heretofore has been impossible. So that is anticipated in this project.
And the other two connections will remain?
Yes, we actually don't control any of those connections, but we can get to that one, right? Yes. At the same time as we're doing those major pieces of landscaping, we have designed a buffer system for the remaining bits of as it abuts to the neighbours, and screening for the parking. So this is a 15-foot wide strip, and as you know, there's already some mature trees along here. We're reinforcing it. We're reinforcing with trees and shrubs down here, and a substantial buffer is provided on Lagoon Street to the abutter here before you get to this lot. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen in this lot, but partly we've ensured that, irrespective of that, a buffer is maintained here so that the landscaping is distributed in a way to try and make sure that our building impacts as little as possible and positively impacts as much as possible. So just going on a little bit to the building. The building, as Jim said, is a 67-unit building. 8 of the units are affordable. We don't yet know which ones they are. There's usually a process we go through with community development that assigns those. But the unit mix, and the different shades are your 2 bedrooms are the dark blue. This is a 3-bedroom unit, 1-bedroom unit, and the studio, so this slightly more beigey color. So basically, you look at the first floor plan here, and you're able to see more clearly the 2 entrances to the buildings, the very substantial indoor bicycle parking areas, and this is there's 15 spaces that I didn't really talk about much when I went over the parking that are covered. The edge of the building is right there. So your unit mix overall is there's 9 studios, 15 1-bedrooms, 31 2-bedrooms, and 12 of these large 3-bedroom units. So that's your overall unit mix. We'll just flip you up through the floor plans. Basically what's happening here, now we're on the 2nd floor, and go up to the 3rd floor. This is the second and third, and this is the 4th floor. And here, just flip back down again. So what you're seeing there is the 3rd floor, and then in Bishop there was in order to keep a deferential quality to the linear park, calls to go up on the slide. calls for anything within 50 feet of the linear park to be cut back. So you're seeing it cut back in our drawing here, such that the 4th floor stays short of the 3rd floor below it. Next one. And this is our roof plan. And then these are flattened out. You can see that in fact it's really a strong U-shaped building. This lower drawing is what faces the linear park. We haven't covered it with trees so you can actually see the building, but basically this is the wings that are coming towards you. If you can imagine the plan here, and then this is a lot further behind. So there's a whole courtyard in front of you here. So there's the wing coming towards you, wing coming towards you. So that's facing the linear park. The north elevation above it is, you can see there's the covered spaces, but at the ends, the building comes all the way down to the ground, so that when you get to the 2 end elevations, which are next, you see here, so this is the Whittemore end, and here you see the entrance to the building, and the building massing is somewhat broken down so that there's a series of volumes, and then the lower 3-story portion, there's a little setback here. So, and you can see that it's developed as fundamentally a 3-story building with a 4th floor mansard where it is a 4-story building. The building has bays and probably a masonry bottom on it here, and then a typical clapboard wood frame aesthetic elsewhere. And then we go to the other end of the building, which has a similar appearance as it looks to.
We didn't do that.
Oh, we didn't do that. So actually, the other end of the building looks the same as this, the other way around. So that was the one you saw in the perspective. Just to give you a sense, what's interesting is these are sections, so it's as if you're slicing through the site, and this slice is taken so that you are seeing the courtyard here. And what it's illustrating partly is that the linear park is up at a higher elevation, about 6 feet above here. And so you can see that actually between the 6 feet and the 30 feet, this is only 24 feet above the linear park to this cornice line. And here you see it stepping up. This section is taken through the building itself, as it were, through the wings there. And you see how that's working. So here you can see that the 4th floor is here, and this is stepping down to the 3rd floor. And again, the linear park is right there. Can we just go back one? I just want to show something else. Just back to the section.
Oh, section.
So it's not very visible here, but I just wanted to show. So this is the property line. So there's the controlled parking facility. Well, it's better here. The controlled parking facility, as we call it, is this stretch down here, which has the 15-foot green setback, and then our car on the aisle under undercroft parking, which is another suggestion that came from you all. So this is a section just going through it's actually cut sort of offsetting, so you see the 4-story and the 3-story versions, but showing you the way in which the courtyard works. And now we're back to the beginning. So this was the elevation that we didn't have, so this is the view from Tyler as you first come into the project. So basically, at the 2 ends, yeah, this is great. At the 2 ends, basically what we are trying to achieve as an experience for this building is a building that relates kindly to the abutting streets in its visual appearance. Doesn't have much presence, as you probably know, down Cottage Park, because it's not visible down Cottage Park. It was not visible. It steps back from Cottage Park. It's behind the alignment of the other buildings on Cottage Park. You would see it if you were there, Tyler, in this view. And if you go to the other end of the site, what's happened is, and this is just illustrative again, these buildings do not exist today and they're not part of our project, but this is just a kind of a very sketchy intuition of the kinds of things that might occur on those lots. And our building is back here, and that's it's over 150 feet back from the end of Whittemore. So from the end of Whittemore to that turnaround in the front door is about 150 feet. So it's a building that's in the far background as you get to the end of Whittemore and the junction with Magoon. So I think that's.
I have the civil, but that's it.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add unless there are questions, and then we can do that in Q&A.
Start questions.
Okay, we want to have a half an hour for
questions and answers, not comments. Who's first? You know, just, well,
Okay, so we'd like to have 30 minutes of Q&A from the interested attendees. So we'll get the lights on, I guess. In the absence of anyone else being hands going up, I'm going to ask a question. Will each tenant be required to rent a rental space as part of his lease?
Based on the discussions we had with this group the last time around, we understood that everyone was concerned that if we were charging folks for parking, they wouldn't pay it and they would park on the street. So the way we anticipate this working is that for surface parking in our project, you get that when you rent your unit, so you don't pay extra for that. There may be a slight charge for the covered parking, because that keeps you out of the snow, and those would be premium spaces. But we feel that those would be, leased by people who really wanted that benefit and wouldn't be parking on the street anyway.
So every unit comes with a parking space.
Okay.
And you could, yeah. And frankly, the city has a policy that's slightly different. They encourage you to charge for parking because they believe that perhaps people won't have cars. But I think there was an understanding when we met with the city that in a neighborhood like this, people would be far too easily tempted to park on resident streets if they were being charged to park. So parking is, you get a unit, you get a parking space.
All right, I'm going to have our veteran get the honor of the first question.
I got 3 questions. Traffic control is number 1, and safety of the street. And what I'm seeing that you've laid out on your map, you control it, but you haven't. I asked the question: could people go through the parking lot and go up Cottage Park Ave? And the answer was yes, they could. And I've asked the question: could they get through the control gate? And they say yeah, they could get through. And I've asked the question, why did they build a building closer to the resident? Why not build it over close to the bicycle path? We don't care about the bicycle path. We live on the street. We're safety and cars that's driving on it. We don't care what your building looks like, how many lives in it. If you don't run over me coming up the street, I don't care. Now, if you can control that, we can agree with it. If you don't control that, then we have to go to court or something because we're not going to accept it. That's number 1. You tell me how you can control it. I've asked that question. How can you control it?
Well, you're correct, Mr. Fox. If you
now the order from the court order says the city has they have the order to control the street for safety and convenience.
Right.
If you turn 27 cars, we're parked on our street now, not counting the parking spots, but the parking lot from the building, and you get 67 more, which could, don't mean they could, they won't, but they could, use Cottage Park Ave. And if you open, you know yourself, we closed the gate for 19 years, and you talked about Tyler Court, it's too narrow. They worked and run a business 19 years without any problems. And now you're saying the street, now Cottage Park Ave is 12 feet wide with parking. That's got 20 feet going up Tyler Court. Which is wider? My street or Cottage Park or Tyler Court? I mean, that's just common sense to ask a question like that. And the street was $55,000 when they built it. It was probably 10 times that now. To build that street into this property. It's a private street in and usable. So if you can't control the traffic on our streets, then we have to go back and ask the court what they are saying, what they wrote when they opened the street. That's where Bob Sears is at now, and he's so upset he didn't come tonight. He says he's going to enforce this, getting a lawyer and taking him to court again.
Jim, can I ask you, have you read that? Are you familiar with that order?
I am, yeah.
So you can answer the question.
Well, I would say we spent a fair bit of time talking to the city about the orders, about the access. This property has 3 streets that dead end into it: Edmonds, Tyler Court, and Cottage Park. And then on the other side, of course, of the other two streets. But those three streets dead end into this site. So it is true that the residents of the project, because those that have cars will be able to access into the parking lots through any one of those three streets, or for that matter, the other two streets. And the thinking around traffic has been that you create as much opportunity for traffic distribution, so no one street is in disproportionate burden of the volume of traffic. So we have 4 or 5, depending on how you count them, ways to get into the site. What we have designed it for is to ensure that people who don't live in the project can come from the Whittemore Ave side and cut through and continue on Cottage Park, Edmonds, or Tyler. That cannot happen because of the physical constraints of the controlled parking.
Now, you answered me the question, what do you mean by control?
Well,
You said,
gates.
now here's what I want to tell you and ask you now. When the gate was put up, now I got the letters in writing, they said they would keep the gate closed. Only open it ever so often for emergency and to control it. But they opened the gate wide. Now, what's stopping them from opening these gates wide? That's what we're saying. You have no control unless you control it.
Right.
Now, if you're not controlling it, then that means that we're sitting there wide open, that it can be opened up wide again. And I've had 2 dogs already killed, and my little daughter almost got killed on Cottage Park Ave. And it's only been about 3 or 4 months ago that the cat got hit. Leaving the traffic coming up the street, and me staff almost got hit when he got there. It's not the traffic all the time, it's that one car, that one traffic that's not controlled that we're afraid of. And if it come up at all this speed, if you can't come up with a controlling factor, we have to go another way to get it. That's all I'm saying. And Bob is already, he's so serious now he wants to hire a lawyer and let him and you fight it out in court.
Jim, are these control gates with card access?
Yes, that's what's envisioned. Card access or clickers, so that only a resident could go through what we're calling that middle area where there's covered parking and
You mean 67 can go up that gate and come up Cottage Park? That's what you're saying? That's what you're saying?
Well, no, theoretically, all could.
That's what we will not accept. We'll accept our portion. There's 7 streets on your property. If you'll divide those streets up by 67 or 80 or whatever, and divide it up by 7, we'll take our share, and we'll accept that. But we won't accept a gate that you can, not that you won't, but you can use, and it'll leave wide open to Cottage Park. And we're such a short street, and our down lane, 12 foot wide. Right now, if a car comes up, we gotta wait till it goes by, or wait the car coming down, they can't get out, they gotta wait. I mean, that's already. Now you're gonna have 27 on the end of it. It's already gonna be there. Plus you got 67 that can do it. Now, if you can't come up with a factor that will control it, we're not going to accept it. Not what you say, but what you do.
Okay, he's going
Kelly,
to address
could you-
that. And we have
Just
young
could you-
lady.
Just on that, could you point out where the automated gates are? These, I presume these
Do we
are
have
like
a closer view on that?
There's a gate here,
Yeah.
and there's a gate here.
That's
Why don't you zoom in on that?
Can we zoom in on that?
So the other 2 parking lots, or the other parking lot at the far right end, as we're looking at it, that is not controlled. That's open
Not
to.
controlled. It's wide open for 27 cars.
23.
There's 23.
There's 23 there.
Where
And
the-
are those
where
are
do they
assigned?
get in
Are
there?
those assigned to?
Yes, they would be assigned.
You mentioned
But-
something about visitors. So
Well-
where are the visitor spaces?
Well, if you do the math, 67 units and 78 spaces. So each unit gets a space. So there's 11 visitor spaces, and we'll accommodate the visitors.
Cottage Park, yeah.
On either probably the 2 surface lots. Obviously, you're not going to have the visitor spaces within the controlled parking facility because they're going to pull in and have a visit. They're not going to have the ability to access
Right.
it. So I would envision probably a distribution along the drive and in the surface parking lot of a few visitor parking. We have we have 11 visitor spaces.
Is that
Okay.
including
And
the
it's-
Okay,
67?
now,
No,
this lady
67
has had a
plus.
question for quite a while.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Von Hoffman. I live in North Cambridge on Walden Street, and I'm running for City Council. I had a quick question on tonight's presentation, and thank you for this presentation. What is the definition that we're using for affordable housing in this construction?
So,
We are following the City of Cambridge zoning ordinance and the Redevelopment Department's guidelines on that. It's not subject to negotiation. It's outlined in 11.200 of the city zoning ordinance.
Okay, is there any way you can be a little more specific? I'm familiar with the ordinance, but I know that there's a difference between the low-income affordable housing and moderate-income affordable housing.
I don't know what the moderate is that you're referring to. We don't have any provision for moderate affordable housing.
Okay, so you're defining it as low-income?
I'm not defining it. The city has defined it.
Is it defined as low income?
Yeah, that's.
They don't use the term low income. They use the term affordable.
So it could be either one.
I think Tom won't know.
Okay, any other questions?
Flood zone on contamination.
On the
Making
parking,
negative.
are you gonna break it up in that back with the control gates as far as how many cars use Whittemore and Lagoon Inn, and how many cars use the Cottage Park Inn? You have no control right now. They could all use Lagoon and Whittemore, they could all use Cottage Park, correct?
The residences, yes.
Yes.
The other thing is, Jim, you stated that the city moves for not including the parking spaces with the units. I checked that as far as today. There's nothing in writing that says you can separate the parking space other than a special permit which happened over on Cambridge Park Drive where you could double use the parking space.
Yeah, no, that isn't what I said, Mr. Flynn. What I said is the city's policy is for.
Well, there's nothing in writing.
But you haven't
Basically,
stated the
each
policy
unit
correctly.
has
That
to
is
have a parking.
That's correct. That's correct. But what
And
this
it can't be separated from the unit and rented separately.
right? I couldn't agree more. But what the
So
city's
that the ones underneath the cover, I hate to interrupt, but the ones under the cover are gonna go with a unit.
correct.
Whether they cost more to the unit or not, they're gonna go with a unit.
Oh, no question. We have 67 units, and the zoning requires us to provide 67 parking spaces. What I was referring to is the city's transportation department has a policy that encourages landlords to charge for parking. In this case, we are bucking that policy and saying, no, given the site conditions in this location, we are not charging for parking. You pay your rent, you get a parking space. I think what Steve was referring to is that you may pay a premium if you're in the covered parking space. You might pay an extra few
Well,
dollars.
that's up to
that's
them what they
right,
charge for
right,
it, but
yeah.
they have to give the person.
Absolutely, required under zoning each
Number
space.
two, there is a lot of other developments that are trying this, of separating the parking.
But when you say this, we are not trying to.
Comes down on them, they're gonna be required to give the parking spaces to the tenants.
That's what we're doing.
We are doing that, and in fact, I will tell you, we are pushing against the tide to give more spaces than units, which is not
There's a
typical.
question, I have a gentleman here.
Yeah, hi. My name is Mike Phillips, and I live on Madison Ave. And I heard your description of what you're going to do with the lots that are not part of the project, making them, basically they're 5,000 square foot lots to 1 or 2 family buildings. The 3 lots on Whittemore are currently in District SD2, which allows multifamily buildings. So you could do a 6-unit building, the future owners. So my question is, are you willing to covenant through deed restriction that multifamily uses will not occur on those 3 lots? To sort of go along with your vision that you've presented here.
I mean, I don't think we had thought of that. I think, frankly, we probably, our thinking is that the highest and best use and what would make these lots, frankly, attractive in the marketplace is the fact that they could, frankly, we have an interest, there's been interest expressed for someone who wants to build a single-family house on one of them.
So you have no objection to adding that language?
Well, yeah, I'd have an objection because you're talking about an asset, you're asking to constrain it, so no, I mean, it wouldn't be something that I think is warranted. The zoning dictates what can happen there. It's quite prescribed. So in theory, if someone bought all 3 of those lots, I suppose you could do 6 townhouses on 3 lots. It wouldn't be the highest and best use of the land, and I'd be surprised if that ever came about. Don't forget, you can't combine the other lot because it's not contiguous. So if someone came along and said, I'll take the whole thing and I want to build 6 townhouses, would that be inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood? I mean, well, I don't know.
I think Tom has some
I
information.
looked into it today. SD2 requires 1,800 square foot per unit. And in 5,000 square feet, you can only get 2 units per 5,000 square feet.
That's right.
So that you can't put any more than 2.
3 times 2 is 6, Tom.
6 units.
That's what I was talking about.
Next 3 2-family houses.
That's right.
Or a single 6-unit building.
Yes.
Or a
thank you for answering the question.
No, it doesn't come under the townhouse zone.
We can talk about it later if you'd like.
Okay. Any gentlemen?
Yeah, assuming the construction schedule, how long do you envision the construction being, and what precautions have you taken for the use of the streets for construction vehicles and noise remediation, things like that?
Well, construction of a building of this size will probably take 12 to 14 months. There's plenty of space on this site for laydown, putting materials down as they're being used that can keep them off the city's streets and away from the residences here, because it's a very large site for the size of the building that we're building.
What about the truck traffic, though, that's for the suppliers?
Well, there will be truck traffic coming in to bring supplies. There's no way of getting around that. It won't be inconsistent with with oil trucks that are going in and out of there now.
So the oil trucks are only on Taylor Court. Are you going to stay on Taylor Court?
We haven't gotten that far.
Can you tell them to stay on Taylor Court?
I don't know if we can or we can't.
We could.
We probably.
Yeah, we'll probably could. We can work out with the city you have to give them a plan as to how you do it. I would imagine that would make sense. I mean, there may be an odd delivery that doesn't fit on time or whatever, but yeah, we can work on a construction mitigation plan and identify priority streets. And I think if it would work, Tyler Court would make the most sense. It would be the least disruptive.
The other streets opposed to no trucks.
Well,
there you go. That'll do it.
Except for
We would have no problem using Tyler Court. We try to do that.
So I have a question from the linear park perspective, and it's about the fence. And I know you guys have been really, I know that your concept about the chain link fence is that you can see through it. And I love the idea that you want to throw things up on it. But I would wonder why you can't put up a more attractive fence like, you must be familiar with when you go down the linear path the other way towards Davis Square. You may not be.
Yeah, no, I know that stretch, yeah.
You know where they've built those loft apartments and they've got that like black fencing?
Wrought iron.
Sort of wrought iron, right. Why can't you do something like that and put plants on it too? It would be 1,000 times more attractive, and it would be see-through also.
I think what is the exact? Well, there's two issues here. One is the fence that's there now is not our fence.
It belongs to the city?
It belongs to the, I'm not sure it's the city. Whoever controls the linear park.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm not sure that the zoning doesn't actually preclude us using other kind of fence materials. I think the new zoning, I think, Bishop petition, I think, specified the kind of fence.
It had to be, you have to be able to see through it. But
You can see through those. You can see through those wrought iron fences.
I don't think we've decided. I think what the zoning does is says what you can't have. You can't have like a solid wood fence.
Right now, the drawings do call out a chain link fence, and I think it says existing chain link fence on the drawings. Have you got the landscape drawings?
One candidate.
Do we have any photos that show what it looks like?
Yeah. I think the idea is to minimize the fence with plantings all along.
Because it's not your fence. So the answer is, it's not your fence, so you're just gonna plant
I'm
on
open to what you say, but I...
Yeah, no, I hear it. If it's not your fence, you can't take it
So
down.
right now, for the special permit application, the way the drawing reads is where it exists, which is everywhere except where the garage is.
Okay.
You know, and then we were infilling where the garage comes down.
Oh, so what will you fill that in with? More chain
Yeah,
link?
no, it does say more chain link. That's what the application says. I hear what you're saying.
Well, then I would suggest you to really look at that, because then if you've set a precedent that you've got a more attractive fence there, and as the rest of the fencing falls apart, there would be then reason to put up nicer fencing. And it would really interact much more nicely for
If
everybody.
I can just add to that, the ownership really isn't it, because this came up at the former Cambridge lumber site, and Peter Lee, after he got his permit, you know, addressed the problem and redesigned his interface with the linear park to include, you know, wrought iron style fence, and actually worked with the engineering department having to do with swales and so forth.
Yeah, and that fence is 4 feet high, on Cambridge lumber, so.
I think it is here too, on
Much
our
like-
side. Same thing.
Well, not if it is the existing
The
fence.
existing one is
Existing
on
fence
linear
is.
park.
Yeah, that's 6 feet.
But
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 4
there was
feet high is
this
pretty
was
good, 6 feet. It does
this
the
was
job.
4 feet to be compatible with this over at Davis
Right.
Square.
Yeah, 4 feet's.
But it'd be great if you can look at that and redesign, and I can even send you, you know, what they came up with.
That'd be great.
And the city is fine with working with it and coordinating with the team.
Michael, looking at the clock, why don't you start asking yours?
Well, because I think other people are asking most
Are
of
there any
them.
other questions?
Have you thought about the
Oh,
lighting
well,
plan?
actually,
Will there be lighting along the linear park?
I didn't understand.
Yeah, the lighting along linear park. I think we do not have a full lighting plan. But I can say that based on what we know, is that we will not be attempting to, nor will we be providing lighting that's specifically directed at throwing any light at all on linear park.
What about your parking lots?
Our parking lots, we will provide lighting to the sort of recommended levels in terms of the lighting.
Parking lot will be away from the linear park route toward the
Yes.
residential area.
Yes.
So those should be something that will not impact the neighbors.
That's
Right.
part of the mission petitions.
Both will do.
Zoning requires certain type of lighting.
So they'll be shielded light fixtures and they will throw light onto the
The
park.
location of the surface parking is somewhat strategic. People who know the site. The first parking lot you've got as you come in from Whittemore actually abuts that gas company building, so
Yeah,
there's not a lot of conflict there.
This is the gas and star.
The next building in its first stretch has limited openings. I believe the second stretch might have some. And then, of course, as you proceed down, then we're abutting another parking lot. So the proximity to residential uses is pretty well screened.
They just don't want all the headlights
Yes.
to be shining into the linear park.
Yes.
Oh, no.
We don't shine any headlights
Linear
on
park
the
is very high
Oh,
compared to ours.
that is another advantage, is that we are below the linear park. So I think that the fact we've held our parking as far as we can away from the linear park to impact it as little as possible.
all right.
Hi, I'm Dan. I live on Cottage Park. I'm just curious what kind of studies. I tried to decipher the traffic study that was in the previous plans. What kind of studies you've done to actually think about the different traffic flow on the various access streets? Just because from anecdotally, it seems to me as though people will be using different streets more, right? So Cottage Park's exit is right by a traffic light, so it's easier to take a left turn there. Going out Whittemore is much harder to get to Mass Ave from Whittemore. So people are going to be using these streets very differently, and so I feel like it's a little disingenuous to say there are all these different ways of exiting the property when people, by logic, from their convenience, are going to be choosing one or the other exits more often or less often. And it seems to me as though, I mean, certainly I can tell you Cottage Park is not, as it's currently configured, can't take the amount of traffic that it gets when the dance studios get coming out. So the idea that if that is what people decide is the most convenient egress point, suddenly you're talking about, at certain times of day, 60 cars, which seems to me just sort of incomprehensible, especially because we have another 20 cars in the new development at the end of our street. So I just wonder what kind of studies have been done about that, and how you've thought about that.
Well, we've done our traffic consultant has done a study. The whole notion of trip distribution in a traffic study, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think the analysis presumes that people will exit based upon the direction they're heading. So if you're heading inbound on Mass Ave towards Harvard Square, you might choose one street. If you're going the other direction, so I don't know why we're accused of being disingenuous. We're suggesting that a standard model that's used is when you create multiple opportunities, you have the greatest likelihood of varied distribution. And that's what we're assuming here. There'll be no 67 cars. Trips are calculated by the number of trips that are generated per hour. Given the number of residential units and the number of ways to access the site, we'll get to the traffic study, but it's nowhere near the types of numbers you're talking about.
And given that the dance studio fills up all at one time and then empties all at one time, that would have much more impact than people coming and going.
You hear what you say. Everybody says something, but you do what you say. That's what I'm saying.
All right, it's now 8 o'clock, and
there's a woman
are there
here.
any other questions?
There's a woman here who's raised her hand.
Oh, okay.
Has been trying for a long time.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Manhook. I'm the North Cambridge resident and a parent. And my daughter attends the dance school that's currently located at that property. And I guess this is a question for me. I'm impressed that your plans take into consideration green space and frisbee paths and community gardens, but I just wonder whether there was any effort made to try to keep a cherished institution alive that's so much a part of what makes Cambridge worthwhile to live in, even though it's so expensive and inconvenient in so many other ways, but it's this diverse artistic community that is so important to the families here. And it seems like there is all this space and accommodation for various elements, and I just wonder whether your company has even tried to work with existing companies who are such cherished elements of the neighborhood that make us want to stay in North Cambridge.
You're the best attorney, Jim, so you've got to have a good
Well, you know, the Fawcetts think if I was the best attorney, they would have cut a ribbon on a 104-unit building about 2 years ago. So there might be a difference of opinion on that. But I would say that, you know, that's a use that's in a building. Once the decision is made to develop the site as a housing site, there really aren't opportunities for other uses, frankly. So I think they've tried to be cooperative with Deborah and give her as much time as possible. But to be candid, once the decision has been made to relocate the oil business and turn this into a housing site, it doesn't work for other non-residential uses.
So parking spaces, frisbee areas, other spaces set aside for single-family homes, all of those things can be accommodated, but not an existing cherished, company that has been part of Cambridge for 30-some years and is deeply cherished by the parents who choose to live in the neighborhood.
My kids took Irish step dance there. So, I mean, I get the value it makes, but I would say, it's not that it couldn't, but when you look at the zoning and you look at the overall transformation, it becomes a housing site. So once it's a housing site, no, those uses really can't be accommodated.
Would it be possible maybe to look into selling her that part of the site, maybe putting the planned parking there elsewhere?
No.
That's direct.
I wouldn't want.
That's what I thought. But somebody.
Can I say I never got the sense that she has an interest in buying real estate. But I don't.
Well, I'm not sure she can or she can afford, but she has a lot of very strong community zoning.
Oh, I agree.
Citywide, not just here, and
Yeah, I don't know that you can construct a new building and have that use in it. Frankly.
I don't think the cost of her constructing a new building and paying the costs involved to do that would make sense for her, probably.
You could ask her.
It might be something to explore if you'd be open to I'm sure she's not ready to make an offer. But,
Well,
also, as far as the ownership,
are you starting to your?
well, I have a few.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I'm trying to limit.
The final
On that last question, Deborah's been there for a long time, and she's known for at least probably 4 or 5 years of our long-term desires to develop the property. So it's not like she hasn't had a heads up on what's going to happen.
Sure,
And we like Deborah, we get along well with her.
This question is not from the perspective of
Right.
Deborah Mason, it's from the perspective of a
Oh,
parent who lives
okay.
in North Cambridge,
I understand.
who sees all of the resources available to families disappearing beneath parking lots and some new housing developments, and the character of what makes Cambridge, North Cambridge special to us being disappearing. So I'm asking this question as a parent, not for any interest for Deborah Mason.
Okay.
Uncle,
If I can ask a couple of clarifications.
Yeah. Now, no, can you ask your questions, because I know that you're anxious to hear from Michael before you leave?
Yeah.
So I'd like Michael to ask his question.
Well, just one is on the issue of the ownership. In the 4 lots that would be 2 families eventually. Are you saying that those would be sold to somebody else for development and not
Possibly.
developed by the same owners?
I think it's wide open.
So it could be either way.
It could be sold as raw land. It could be developed and sold. It could be developed in consultation with someone else. But I think at the moment, the thinking is it's separate, and that's what the vision is for those.
All right.
things.
And do you envision that happening after this is completed, or possibly simultaneously?
Thought that through.
If
Well, I
it's sold
think-
to somebody else, for
Yeah,
instance?
If we could get the value of the properties, which we hope to be able to sell them and get some money, very honestly, we could use that money to help develop this property. We need some cash. And we could sell off those lots individually. And somebody might put a single-family house on one, somebody might put a 2-family house on one. And if we could sell it at a fair price, then we'd certainly entertain that.
Okay. And Jim had said that this doesn't require order of conditions from the Conservation Commission?
Right.
So does that mean that none of the site is in the 1% flood zone under the new mapping?
Yep. Our civil engineer has been all over it with the staff and with the new maps and all that.
They filed with FEMA to that effect.
I'm sorry?
They filed paper with FEMA to that effect.
Do you want to pop in with a quick question?
Just a quick one. On the parking lot, where are the entrances for the Edmund Street Cottage Park, that little parking lot? Where do you get in and out of there?
So, you're talking about this?
Yes.
So, the way that is constructed, there's one way in here and one way in here.
And then on the other parking lot, it's right off the circle, right?
On here, it's right there.
It's not clear to me.
The reason that those paths run over is the way that the delayling's done is like your sidewalks, where your sidewalks have precedence over the cars.
It's a raised
Yeah, that's
crossing
right.
table.
It's a raised crossing type detail.
And how will you control visitors from parking in assigned space? Because that's those
Same way as anyone else running
I was going to say, anyone who runs multifamily or office, I mean, I guess you post it, you enforce it, the building will have management.
Because particularly since you're going to be removing the parking lot that's currently used by Marino's Health Center, there are going to be commercial, people coming looking for places
Well,
to park.
if they park there, I'm sure they'll be turned.
Then finally, people have asked me about the environmental conditions and soil conditions, and would like to know what testing has been done, what testing is envisioned, and what documentation you'd be willing to share with us.
I'm not aware, we were talking about this recently. At the time that the Fawcetts acquired the Norberg property, they did some evaluations and examinations, and things were in order. We haven't got to that phase yet of the property, of the development phase, but I don't know, at some point, I suspect a lender will be making demands upon a property owner on that regard, and that's probably when it will happen in earnest.
Well, I guess, yeah, there's a lot of concern because the former community garden across the street there was part of the Norberg properties, and as you know, that was pointed out, that was discovered that it had contaminants. So people are concerned about, you know, what's in this industrial site, you know, especially if it's going to be developed for housing. Do you know, Red?
Yeah. If we're going to develop this, well, first of all, when we bought the property from Norberg, we borrowed a lot of money from Citizens Bank. And Citizens Bank required us to do a 21E on the property at that time, which is, I don't know how many years ago, but 7 or 8 or 10 or something like that.
Almost 10.
And the environmental report came back that there was not a problem with it. No arsenic was pointed out to us. The arsenic was actually found by the city of Cambridge. When they were thinking of buying that property as a community garden, they asked us if they could do a 21E on it. We said, sure, go ahead. And they did, and they found the arsenic on the site, much to our chagrin. And that kind of quieted that whole deal down. So we have to, and it's in the middle of a cleanup phase on that property. It's in, Rob, you know the phase.
Yeah, Mike knows it better than I. He taught me all about it. But I think it's called a Tier 2 site, and all the records and all the LSP findings are readily available on the DEP website. So we're trying to have a fully transparent approach to doing it. We've got a qualified third-party LSP who Mike has spoken with personally. Mike, you want to add to that?
I can't vouch to his credentials.
On the rest of the property, in order to finance it, we'll have to do environmental study.
Detailed
for the bank
environmental will have to be done before we build anything.
Would you be able to share that 21E that was done originally?
No.
A question that pops into my mind is, why did this round of testing turn up contamination?
I think
and
they
not
changed.
that one?
I think they
It was
changed
different property. Different property.
Well, when you bought the Norberg site, you didn't test the
As
entire
I understood
property?
it, anything on it, yes, we did. But
And there were greenhouses
I think they
there,
changed the standards on the arsenic, so when back then it wasn't a reportable incident, but when they
If I can interject, there was no mention of arsenic at all in that 21E.
Right.
So don't speculate
It's not
on
clear
what
what the
there was.
source
I
of
don't
it
think
was. There was treatment.
Well, that could be an explanation that the
yeah.
arsenic was introduced by a gardener.
That's right.
Subsequent to
that's what we
to
think.
your-
There's a high level of speculation to that effect.
Right. My question is, would you be willing to, just provide that earlier study that was done, as well as the original, the one that
I know.
cited?
Yeah, I'd say the short answer. I'm trying to come up with a polite way to say no. It just, a 10-year-old 21E report done to obtain financing at the time of acquisition. I'm not sure there'd be much. I think there'd be more. I'd be concerned about the information, the relevance at this stage.
Okay, we've hit the hour that we're going to excuse our presenters.
Okay.
Unless there's a deathless question from someone who can't just go over.
I just want to clear them up on the floodplain. There's a map right here showing the driveway that you're going to use is in the floodplain.
Well, we got a civil engineer, and he's as good as the lawyer and the architect.
Working with the OCO.
We're relying on him. If that's not correct.
The OCO couldn't tread in that neighborhood because of the floodplain. They couldn't adjust anything. And you've dug out the greenhouses 15 inches below the road and changed the floodplain in there to start with. On top of that, isn't even shown on here, but the roadway is shown on here as being in the floodplain. So I'd like to know who filed it so I can tell them.
John, do you have a question?
No, I had on mine, I just think, probably too early, is that stick built the prefab?
Well, it will be wood construction.
Yeah.
There's a potential.
Okay, so
Can I have one more question?
all right, you can have one.
But before we go to the building department, what we're gonna go to, and we're gonna go to city councils and try to vote this down, which I think I have enough start to do. Now, I did it before, and I think I can still do it. And you come up with a plan to control traffic on Cottage Park Avenue. I'm not gonna say the other streets, but I can't force you to do anything. You're gonna have to do this willingly to control it, because if you don't, we're going to fight it with every inch of mine. I've only got 10 years to live, and I'll fight for the next 10 years. I'm only 87.
Don't sell yourself short.
I'm only 87, but I'm telling you, we'll not stop till we control traffic. Now, you can control
I understand
it,
how important it is.
or you can keep me out of it if you can tell me how you can control it. That's all I'm telling you.
Fair enough.
Now, Makeup, do you have a question?
Well, it had to do with water too. I mean, you've already increased some of the permeable space there, but, you know, I'd love to see it even higher permeable. So is there a way to use pervious surface on the parking lots? Is there a way to have the garage underneath the building? Of course, will add to the cost, but I think would add towards the...
So just so you understand, the parameters, we're at about 0% now, and about 50% when we're done. So...
I thought it was 20.
50%.
Right.
50%.
That's good.
Yeah, so no, I mean,
more.
whatever else you think about it, I think anyone can't claim that we're doing well on stormwater and pervious. We're 10% over, and it's, the district is 40%, which is the highest standard in the city, and we're 10% over what's required. So I think on that score, I would suspect.
All right.